Did you know that LeBron James started a school? Me neither. So, much like LeBron, is it in the running to be the GOAT? Not quite. Hey everyone, welcome to the School Ground Weekly Newsletters. These are going to be short videos where I'll be recapping important things that happened in education recently that I think you might all find interesting. And I'll be publishing these in addition to the longer form videos that I'll be working on at the same time. For example, the bullying video that I just published the other day, which if you haven't seen already, I'd encourage you to do so. There's a link down in the description below to that. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And with that, let's get on to today's news. First up today, for those of you who are unaware, basketball legend LeBron James, say that 5 times fast, grew up in Akron, Ohio, where he went to public school, and he admittedly said that he had some challenges while he was in school there, claiming to have missed 83 days while he was in the 4th grade, which is probably close to half a school year. So now, as part of his philanthropic work, he's trying to give back to his community that he grew up in, and working with the local school district, he started the I Promise School. The first cohort of students at the I Promise School started in 2018, and there were about 240 3rd and 4th graders enrolled in that year. And what made this school really unique is that they actively sought out students that were underperforming. So they would look at second graders' test scores, and anyone that was in the bottom 25th percentile, they would add their name to a lottery, and then if they, selected that student through the lottery process, they would notify the parents, and then the parents could opt to send their child to the I Promise School. And to help these students catch back up, because they were starting off behind already, they offered things like a longer school year, longer school day, smaller class sizes, wraparound services for the students and the families, all with the goal of helping these students who were behind catch back up and succeed in school. So the other day, the I Promise School made headlines due to this bit of information that was shared recently at a school board meeting.
I'm not sure so much this is a question, but I'm looking at the current 7th graders. And so for 3 years, not one child passed the state test in math, not one for 3 years.
It is discouraging.
Okay.
Discouraging is one word you could use to describe that. So this is the graph that was shown during the presentation that the board member was referencing. And as you can see here in the 22-23 school year, 0% of 7th graders were rated proficient on the state standardized math test. And the way you can read this chart is if you start in the top right and go down and to the left diagonally, you can follow the students from, how did they do in 3rd grade in 18-19? They were at 17.4%. Then there was no scoring because of COVID, then 0, then 0, then 0. So the picture for math not looking too good. And here's what the data showed for language arts. So you can again see, for example, in the 22-23 school year, we only had 2% of students that were graded proficient on the state standardized test. But you can see here, actually, if you follow the trend, that although the numbers dipped, at least for language arts, they do seem to be increasing. For example, the 21-22 school year, if we look at the very bottom row, the 7th graders, they were at 8.2%, and now they're at 11% in the next year. So some signs of growth. And it's that growth that the school is citing as, the silver lining, I guess, on this cloud, that even though things are bad, students are meeting their growth goals and that they're continuously getting better. And while, growth is obviously important, we want the students to improve over time. For some of these kids, there's not a lot of time left to grow. They're in 8th grade. They've only got, reasonably 4 years of school left. And at that point, if they haven't learned how to read and do math at that point, well, that's a very serious problem for them. Now, in the school's defense, they opened right before COVID. You couldn't have picked a possibly worse time to do so. And in addition to that, remember that they were intentionally seeking out students that were in the bottom 25% that were already 1 or 2 years behind. So when you combine those two factors, it's not too surprising that the students who started behind are in fact behind. But I hope that the slow, painful start that the school's had here doesn't discourage LeBron or anyone else from investing in public education, because as the man behind me on the wall once said,
"As a son of a tenant farmer, I know that education is the only valid passport from poverty."
And it's been shown time and time again that Education really is the panacea for ending intergenerational poverty, and we really need more people to invest in it and also not be scared when it doesn't get fixed overnight. Our second story today takes us to Houston, Texas, where recently the state education agency, the Texas Education Agency, did a state takeover of the Houston School District, where they had, they just removed the locally elected school board, installed a board of managers, and who hired a new superintendent by the name of Mike Miles, who was charged with increasing the academic performance at some of the underperforming schools. So state takeovers are never received very positively in a community where it happens, mainly because people feel that the democratic process has been overturned, their rights have been taken away, their locally elected school board that they voted for is gone, and now it's been replaced by people that have been installed by the state, and the state is going to appoint some new person. So there's already some high tensions, and normally what happens in a takeover is that the person in charge implements some radical reforms to improve the conditions in the school, and the superintendent in this case is no different. So the new superintendent has started something he's calling the new education system, and while it has a lot of changes, there are three in particular which have generated a lot of buzz. The first one being that he cut 2,347 jobs from the central office to cut costs. Second, he's implementing a pay-for-performance model for teachers, meaning that teachers' salaries will be linked to test scores instead of just how long they've been teaching at the school. So there's no concrete numbers out yet, but there was a draft release, and it gave an example of a range from $65,000 for unsatisfactory teachers to $104,000 for those that were rated exemplary. And the most controversial of them all, he's planning on closing libraries in some of these schools and turning them into discipline centers or team centers, depending on which side of the argument you fall on. So the way this is going to work, according to the superintendent, is that cameras are going to be installed in every classroom. So as teachers are teaching and conducting their lessons, all of that's going to be live streamed over Zoom. There's going to be people in these converted libraries watching these streams, and if any students are causing a disruption or have any behavior problems, they're going to pull them out of the classrooms, bring them into the previously the library, and have them work in smaller groups with some sort of instructional lead or teacher helping the students. And the students are still able to have access to everything that's going on in the classroom because they're able to see it through the camera and because everything's being live streamed over Zoom. As you can imagine, closing down libraries and converting them into these team centers, as they're being called, has caused quite a bit of criticism in the community. And the mayor most recently had this to say during a city council.
The superintendent and the board of managers in closing libraries in these communities, in these schools, he's gone too far. And you cannot educate the kids and close their libraries and then turn them into disciplinary centers. What is the message that you are telling our kids?
So I can definitely see where the mayor's coming from here. When I was a little kid, going to the library was definitely one of my favorite things to do. Just getting to walk around the library and, look at all the books and look at the pictures in them and pick one out and, showing people the book you picked out. It's just a fun experience for kids. It gets them invested in reading, and it's sad that, some of these kids aren't going to have that opportunity anymore. But also just really interesting to see two very different approaches to underperforming schools and, how to make them better. So you have the I Promise program in Akron, where they're, doing these longer years, longer school days and wraparound services for students that are struggling and intentionally targeting those kids in just one school. And then in Houston, we have this, pay for performance teacher thing where it's going to be tied to their test salaries, I guess with the, the goal of getting better teachers. And at the same time, having these team centers where they're going to pull out kids into these converted libraries and have them work, in smaller groups and just sort of watch their classroom through Zoom. Just two very different approaches, but keep in mind, both with the end goal of trying to improve the academic performance for the kids in these schools, because schools are, meant to set students up for success, teach them how to read, teach them how to do math, teach them how to be critical thinkers, things like that. So would love to hear from all of you down in the comments below which approach you think is better, or if perhaps neither of them are better, or maybe a combination of the two. For me, all I can say is that, I hope they're both successful because there are children's education futures at stake here. We want them to learn how to read and do math and be set up for success in the future. And as to which one's ultimately going to perform better in the end, well, only time will tell. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Basketball legend LeBron James, basketball legend LeBron James, basketball legend LeBron James, basketball legend LeBron James, basketball legend LeBron James. Ha!